Good morning, everyone.
Hey,
So we
everybody.
just give a 1 or 2 more minutes for everybody to join in.
All right. What a great Wednesday.
Well, from what I understand, there are people joining from other part of the world. So good day to everyone.
That's right. It's nice when people join from other parts of the world.
It makes the conversation interesting. Well, I think that we should start anyway. So since this is going to be recorded, people can go back and watch it at any time.
All right. So, Stanley, what do you want to talk about today?
Well, we already told everybody what we're going to talk about today. So, why everything changes and what you need to do next. And I think that, Sean, before we start, we should give a little bit background about what we're going to be talking about, who is this webinar is for, and why are we doing this, and where can you find us?
Yeah, we thought that we should do a topic of cyber insurance because it's very relevant now. And so cyber risk insurance is an insurance policy that businesses can get to cover themselves financially in the case of a cyber incident. Much like you would have a property coverage for fire or theft within a building, you can have cyber coverage to protect the business if there's a ransomware attack or data theft, the legal expenses, the potential regulatory penalties and fines that might come from an incident. And it this has been a topic that we've talked about an awful lot, Stanley. You and I, as a customer of NetSwitch, we talked about this when I was looking at policies. My insurance guy trying to get me to get a policy, and I was resistant to doing it because I didn't want to spend the money. And this was years ago. It was easy. He was begging me to take the policy, just to take
Well,
it.
but just like
And
everything, right? If it's important, we have to say it 3 times. So
well, that's true.
and before you go into about your story, Sean, so I'm sure people are eager to hear about it, but which is, there are some learning insights, learning parts within it. And so this webinar is catering for business executives,
Yeah,
governors, and technologists. And why we have these three groups of stakeholders, obviously, they have a different objective within the organization dealing with cyber resilience. And at the same time that they now it is more than ever that they have to communicate and collaborate and looking at the not technical anymore, but looking at this as
right.
a enterprise risk and how to manage it. And one part of it is because of cyber insurance. So this is what we're going to be talking about today. So I'm going to bring up the next slide.
This was a big thing that we were talking about with some of our partners in our ecosystem about the bank processing of $1 billion in ransomware last year. That's just astounding. That's just what the banks processed, um, and so that is going to cause the insurance industry, to take a hard look at what they're doing in just paying out those ransomwares.
Well, let's talk about
Yeah,
why have we talked about the cyber insurance industry has turned upside down,
yeah,
why everything has changed. So this is a clear case study that we had together 3 years ago, or even up to 2 years ago, when our customers subscribe to our platform as a service, and one part of it is the security awareness training
right,
that we actually give away cyber insurance, $250,000. It's a small amount, but we were able to give that away because we were able to bundle it with our platform.
right, right.
And last year, everything stopped and everything turned upside down. And this year, our customer asked, well, we cannot provide that to you anymore. So you need to go purchase your own because all the insurance company we talk to, nobody wants to offer that
Yeah,
anymore without doing the groundwork of evaluating how this company operates in terms of cybersecurity. So every one of those insurance company gave us a list of to do, and if they don't meet any of the item that they listed on there, they told us
Yep.
don't even bother to apply.
If they answered no anywhere on that page, they
Yeah,
were
don't
just
even
denied
bother to
coverage.
apply.
That's right.
And then the funny thing is, why upside down again, going back into it, is if you are qualified, they actually, one of the two of the companies said, I'm going to give you the security awareness training to make sure that your team is aware and what they needed to do in relationship with cybersecurity. So now they actually giving away the security assessment awareness training
Yep.
if you're qualified for the application and they took you on as their customer. So that's what we mean by everything has turned upside down in the
Right.
cyber insurance world. And why is that? People would be asking, well, they should be asking, well, because of the huge attack that was starting in 2020, 2021, well, actually starting in 2020 with the SolarWinds,
Yep.
and because how that particular one case, attack, and able to get into a lot of company be
Right.
loaded in their supply chain, in their customers list, and their customers, because some of them are telecommunication service provider, it triggers to their customers. So it's not just the company got hit, but the company customers customer
Yep.
also
That
got
third and
hit
fourth party
because of.
risk now. Yep.
Exactly.
Yep.
So the whole supply chain, if you may, and look at it, and got impacted. So that is why the insurance company were paying through their noses to recover. And of course, that triggers into what we're talking about on this particular slide. Those customers that, you know, got data breach, and then they have to ransomware, and now the bank has to process $1 billion dollar worth of the bitcoins to pay for those attack in 2021. And then the lawsuit, of course, is still dragging over. And actually,
Right.
this particular case, Sean can talk a little bit more about it, has been going on for years. And then, of course, because of all these cyber attacks, that triggers the states. And
Yep.
everybody, know, if you live in California like I do, with the CCPA, now it's going into the version 2, how they go and adding additional demands to the tech company, in particularly for data privacy, on top of the federal regulations, on top of the industrial
Yep.
compliance and regulations. Or if you have consumers like in the hospitality, if you have customers that coming from EU, you also have to comply to those
Yep.
global regulatory requirements. So all of that, we're looking at least there are 4 layers in what we talked about in
Yeah.
compliance and regulatories. So just that alone, just this one slide alone, there's so many things that we can talk about. And by the way, we're going to start putting some polling questions on our CRG group. If you have not joined our CRG group, you can look at the barcode on the bottom right of the
The
screen,
QR
and
code down
the
there.
QR code. Sorry, not the
Yeah.
barcode. I'm dated myself again. So this is the part that where you can start sharing your insight and exchanging informations in our CRG group in LinkedIn. And some of you have joined from the CRG group, and some of you have not. On a monthly, we would put together a roundtable discussions and a private roundtable to share our insight, to share the stories, so we can continue to enhance our cyber resilience. So, no, back to Sean, your
Yeah.
story as a customer. Tell me more, because that's one thing I keep saying to Sean while he was as our customer, or even now. One thing that IT would do best is nagging, because we have to nag our customer or our management team for budget, or for changing processes, or putting new together, cybersecurity measure. And this is the part that, again, it changed upside down. 2 years ago, we spend years and try to convince our customer to use MFA. Come
Yep.
on, it's there. You already have Microsoft or Google. It's free. It doesn't cost you anything. No, it's too difficult. Oh, my users don't want to use it. It's too inconvenient. Now the cyber insurance come back and say the first thing you need to do is MFA. Oh, okay. So now we have to all do it and change it. And now everybody's dragging their foot, but they only giving you 30 days or even 14 days, 2 weeks to execute it because it's already available
Yep.
and it's free. It doesn't impact any budget. It just That's part of what we have been talking about in our early webinar or podcast, changing narrative. So what are we changing? Why are we changing the narrative? What are we talking about now? So with this cyber insurance and also risk management to achieve the cyber resilience, these are the topic that we're going to be continue to discuss. So back to Sean. Sorry.
Yeah, that's all right, Stanley. You get going in a train of thought, and it just keeps on going. It's going back to when I was offered the cyber liability coverage, and I didn't want to take it. And you were like, "You need to have this," and I resisted it. And it would have been beneficial when the other part I was ignoring you about was implementing proper cybersecurity controls. We had the malware attack, and that affected our business operations. If I'd have had that policy in place, it wouldn't have been as costly to the business as it was.
Well, tell us, well, how did it impact? I think everybody is, as the
Yeah,
owner of
it's
the company, everybody resists because we have to spend time or
so
human resources to it.
that was an employee that went to a a vendor headquarters, connected to their network, and came back to our office, connected to our network, and it launched a malware attack. He brought it back from our vendor's network, and that brought down our entire customer service center. So our call center couldn't take any calls, couldn't process any orders. My warehouse could not receive any orders into our inventory. They couldn't pull any orders to ship out to customers. And our entire operation shut down for about a week while the malware incident was being cleaned up. It was a polymorphic attack, so it kept changing, and as the guys were trying to clean it up out of the network, it was very costly. We didn't process any orders, so we had no
Well, it was
sales.
profitable for me
It was
because
very
you have to.
profitable for you, but it would have been better if I'd had that cyber insurance policy because I could have made that claim. And there was, business interruption. There was a clause in there that didn't cover a cyber incident because they offered a different policy for that kind of incident.
So how would you say that when we give you the proposal to implement certain security measure, how much does it cost you at the end? How many
Oh,
times?
multiples it cost us in cleaning up the event and the lost revenue. It was multiples of what it would have cost us to put it in place. One of the
So
things is not so much the cost, but really one of the things that I've learned as I've talked to customers now and I work with them on putting these things into place is it does make the business better. It makes them more resilient. They understand their operations better and they find weaknesses or deficiencies that while things were moving, it was a deficiency. We can make that better. If we do this, we can make that better. It's they find those things as they look at how they would implement certain controls to secure their business and not rely upon that cyber insurance policy.
So that goes back go into the last bullet point on our current slide. About 95% of cyber risk is coming from human errors.
And
So
it's not just the employees clicking a link or trying to update their Facebook profile. It is configuration errors. It is uh, making the mistake of plugging in a USB or bringing in a device from somewhere else and not thinking about what they're doing. That's
and
that
that goes
security
back
awareness
into the
training.
cyber insurance. Exactly. That's what I was going to say. That's going to security awareness training. It's just little things like that makes it it makes the whole organization a lot better. And let me give you another case study along with that line. And you mentioned about, Sean, you mentioned about configuration error. So this is one of the
Yeah.
case that, in our three steps to care process, the last step is measuring and monitoring. So
Right.
we have this customer monitoring their cybersecurity for the global organizations. And one of the IT admin person from another country's locations and open up a port because they need to test a local software that they were going to implement in their local language. So of course it's not a big deal, we see that happening. We saw the port was open and there was a legitimate reason, so we were able to approve that process and approve that port opening. And their regular process was like 30 days that they supposed to shut it down. Okay, so then we started in day one and monitoring, saw that open, and then day 31, they still open. But of course, everybody know, hey, we IT admin, no big deal. We know that sometimes it takes longer than 30 days, to trial anything. So it went on to another month, 60 days, and then 90 days.
Yep.
Then it starts to question. Then, of course, the headquarter reach out to that IT person. Oh, I forgot to close the port. I'm already done. Wow, that's easy for you to say, but that just one human error could cause the attack.
Right.
And luckily, in this case, that we were constantly 7 by 24 and using automated solutions to monitoring all their infrastructures, all the device. So we were able to track that. But if you imagine that you don't have an automation process and relying on traditional human process, that could be another way for the people to get attacked,
Right.
for another data breach. So that brings into our next conversation about the risk, right? There are all kinds of risk. Cyber attacks is always one of them. But why visibility? Why GRC? And those are the one that we want to spend more time, is because that now insurance is the way that we look at it is the last line of
Yep.
defense. What do you think? If you think there's something else, please, join us in the CRG group and share your insights.
Or share the comments in the webinar right here.
Yeah, and then do you consider we consider it as last line of defense? Because from a business perspective, at the end of the day, that you still have to continue your work and continue your business. It would be nice to have that safety net coming into from the insurance company to able to pay make a claim and get something back. Of course, there's a lot of you might not able to, but at least that there is a safety net. And that's why we look at it as a last line of defense. And let us know your thought. And now that touching on back on the visibility and the GRC, of course the insurance company is going to fight to the nail, uh, 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 to making sure that your organization have done everything that according to their requirement in order to pay the claim.
Right.
But how do you know that you are doing that on a constant basis?
And let's
And
clarify GRC. It's governance, risk, and compliance. It's the
thank you.
policies and procedures, the documentation of what we do, how we do it, and how we enforce it. Then the
Right.
technologists put the controls in place.
So what we're trying to do is, how did that tie in into the visibility, to into the whole thing is because there are so many different pieces in the cybersecurity or cyber resilience. We're talking about IT, we're talking about, the cybersecurity solutions themselves and the GRC, governance and risk compliance objectives. And your company might need to meet multiple of those requirements in the regulations and the compliance. So these are the things that the insurance company, when you file the claim, they're going to look at all those elements. Have you done all the requirements? and they're going to be looking through the gaps and the holes, and if you have not done it, they could reject the claim. And that's why that we looking at it. Okay, we got in our ecosystem, we have lawyers, we have
Yeah.
consultants, to making sure that your company would able to meet those requirements, not just on the regular the GRC issues or your internal objectives, but at the same time making sure that we're looking at the last line of defense, the insurance company, and constantly able to make those requirement that they put out in the first place. They're
Yeah,
not going to care.
you're gonna want to rely upon your insurance broker, your advisor, to really kind of work with you in understanding your business, your requirements, and really kind of going through those fine details of what the coverage is going to be to make sure that you're properly covered, and that you say when you say we do this, they can work with the technology people to understand you really do that because you're making attestations in this application of the insurance company.
Well, that's always been, our customers always ask us what to do, where to start. I think the latter question, where to start, is always the question. So
Right.
we kind of take this a methodology, if you may. We do have a methodology that cover into a 6 steps, but we just kind of share these three, from the strategically, holisticness of cyber resilience and looking at the economic impact, the risk that associate with IT, cybersecurity, and of course GRC, governance, risk, and compliance.
Yep.
And that's a huge topic on its own. But if we look at it from, and we actually have 3 questions, to ask yourself later on in the slide. So I'm going to go to readiness. What is the approach? Well, why visibility? How do you get the visibility when IT is all virtual? Cybersecurity, it's all in the zeros and ones. How do you make it visualize? That's where the data analytics comes in. So
Yeah.
are you collecting any data, including some of our customers come back and complain, oh, because you guys didn't do this, you guys didn't do that well. Then we just look at the tickets, right? Looking at the help desk, it's like how fast did we respond to how much work that we put into it, or how
Right.
little that we put into it, bring it into the cost justifications. And we actually recommending our customers, fire us because you actually need an admin person. You don't need an IT person, having a butt in the seat. You just need somebody that, remotely come in the level 2 or level 3 rather than a level 1. You should hire somebody in-house with a level 1 because they can interact with your administration process a lot faster, and they can sort out what belongs to the IT or GRC rather than utilizing our IT team, the engineers, and try to figure that out for you. So these are the things that from the data, then you can, most importantly, is the cost justifications. That's why I put it in there. And then for all the business owner like myself, well, how do you justify that cost? And without the data, then it's very difficult. But then ties it into the process. So these
Yep.
are the approaches that how do you approach to the holisticness. Okay, now tactical. Yeah, a lot of people, business owners and business leaders, and or even compliance and risk managers, that they have a little, a hard time understanding what are the technologists do. What do these guys do? Why are they always lock themselves up in the server room? It's like, and are they really that busy? All the time, 7 by 24. So these are the tactics. Automation is just one of them, right? And to measure the level of maturity within the organizations,
Yeah.
where can we collaborate? Was it necessary to do certain thing like I just give out the case studies, about the butt in the seat person, or can that be outsourced? And these are the 3 levels. I think it's easily to start tackling the problem and start looking at, cyber resilience as a holistic subject. But of course, every one of them can go into their own tree and start expanding. But if you don't start the conversation today, or 5 years ago, then there's a lot to catch up, of course. So
Yeah.
these are the things that we also have another case studies. One of a wealth management company, multiple location within the United States, and came to us. Stanley, you know what? I know that we have compliance that we have to deal with FINRA in particularly.
Yep.
We also have a New York office. New York States has its own, and they also have a California office. California is another. So, it's too many. I can't digest all of it. And at the same time, my consultant and IT team, I know they're doing their work on a daily basis, but I'm not sure how effective they are doing the work and meeting those GRC requirements that we have. I'm concerned. So that's where we were talking about and then starting the process. Okay, so how do we start? I think the easiest way to start is just doing a baseline assessment, which I come into that in a few minutes. So these are the things that you have to bear in mind. It's just a simple question that you ask either your inside team or outside to start the process, to look at this holisticness, the readiness, and what are the tactics that you can implement. So, Sean, we borrow, yeah,
You're stealing from
NIST,
NIST.
yeah, so we borrow from NIST to talk about the cyber risk management.
You didn't like
And
the way they staged, the way they categorized all this. You wanted to make it into a little phrase you could remember.
yeah, because I have a hard time remembering everything that I've been reading. So there's so much of it, and of course that's part of our job. The way they look at it is prepare, categorize, select, implement, assets, authorize, monitor, right? So which we have touched on every one of those, box. But the way I look at it is how do I decrypt their message? It's like, okay, protect company security in an active management.
Yep.
It's just easier to
Yep.
remember. So Brad brings it into the first thing. It's like, okay, to prepare what they're talking about, right? And how can we protect and prepare and protect, and then start the conversation,
Right.
start evaluating the organizations. So the first step is what Sean had talked about: get a checkup.
Yeah. Go get a physical. You go to a doctor to get a physical. You need to have the blood work done, all the numbers of your physical being checked and validated and baselined. So how do they do that?
Yeah, so active management tie back into what Ness had talked about, how I converted it into active management, and of course active management in the financial world, meanings you got a basket of portfolio, which is similar thing. You invest a lot of money into your IT, cybersecurity, and your human resources, so you have a portfolio of different investment in there. But how do you measure, monitor, and making sure that they are justified, just like your stock that you're buying every day? Do you buy, you sell? IT is similar process, but of course the time frame is a lot longer than a day trader would do and buy and sell a stock. But the point is in the active management is you looking at it as a basket of investment, a portfolio of investment that you have invested, and that relates to your business revenue. And your daily, you got to look at it. How can I actively manage it? And then at the same time, what do you need to buy and sell? And it's just a similar type of process. And that's why I take active management to start these conversations, or at least to help customers to look at it from an active management perspective, and starting with the baseline assessment. Okay, how much money do I have? What is the disposable, money that I can invest into a stock? So, how do we start a baseline assessment, Sean?
We do it automatically for speed because
And consistency.
consistency and the unbiasedness of the assessment. The doctor doesn't look at you and look at you physically and say, "Oh, you kind of look like this. How do you feel?" And that's the assessment. They want to look at numbers. They want an unbiased evaluation of your physical condition based upon lab work. And so we do this automated security risk assessment to do an automated penetration test, show you the way we exploit your vulnerabilities in your network, show you how to fix those things, and make sure that they're fixed properly. And then automatically, we do a system configuration assessment to make sure that the machine configurations on every device are turned on or off the way they're supposed to be compliant. So Stanley mentioned that wealth management company. They wanted to be compliant with FINRA. We evaluated all their configurations and all of their machines in their company to make sure that they were properly configured. And oftentimes, what we find, regardless of who we do this for, the size of organization, um, or the industry that they're in, we find that a lot of machines are not properly configured properly. They're just out of alignment with something because of an update, because of a piece of software they added into it. It's not always going to be 100%, but really oftentimes we find them less than 50% compliant.
Well, and a lot of times that the management comes back, well, how do you measure again? What do you measure against? And of course that there are many different standards, if you
Right.
may, that you measure against. We recommending CIS, Center for Internet Security, for the technologists that who likes to know more. They should look into this organization. It's a nonprofit organization, has been around since 2000, as long as we have been in NetSwitch. So, we rely on them and their controls to give us a framework and a structure to measure against,
You
the
got to shoot for
system.
something.
Yeah, the system configurations. We got to, yeah, exactly. We're going to measure against something. And this organization has been around for so many years, and they have built a very extensive library of all the benchmarks and for the most of the applications out there, including operation systems, cloud infrastructures. So we
It's not
highly
their, and it's
recommend
not
it.
it's not strictly their perspective. It's community built. It takes input from all of the members, people that participate with CIS,
Right.
to develop these benchmarks and standards.
And we just take it into one step into
Yep.
automating it, and that's another case that we did in a global company in a telco. We
Yep.
basically, because they don't want, lack of a better term, their dirty laundry to be exposed, right? So what we did is, that was one of the tactics. We package all of this and just send out, well, sending out like a virtual machine, help them to configure it, and then they shut the door on us, and then they did, the pen testing, the configuration assessment, and the next thing we know is they want to be a partner of ours.
Yeah.
So that was, I mean, that's great for me because all I did, I was, show up and did my sales pitch, and that was it. And then we start going through the legal process, and now they're going to be putting their team. They already put a team together and help us to push this into their customers. And so this is the part that why I'm tuning my own horn is because that we know that a lot of company are worried about their vulnerabilities that being exposed to the outside world. Why we taking it into an automated route in the tactical object with the tactical objective is because that a lot of company that they need to build that trust with their vendor, and now the trust is kind of iffy because of what, everything is going on. And a lot of vendor, of course, is just keep asking to enhance this, buy this, you need another solution, adding more and more on top of it. But we want to give an unbiased, a consistent measure, and without any interventions of the production environment. That's why we mentioned about the wealth management, this global telco company, and all of that, and basically put it into a black box, if you may, since you already know that all the IT people work within the black box. So we put it into another black box, but at least the result would be able to meet the compliance objective because they need to have a pen test to be done minimally once a year.
Yep.
And that's why we're putting this solution together anyway. So I don't want to be keep selling our solution. So we're going to
The
move on to
governance.
the next
Let
one.
me let's touch real quickly on
Sure.
the governance and technical controls, just to make sure the non or the executives understand this. So this is governance controls are, as we said before, the governance, risk, and compliance, the policies and procedures, what you do as an organization, what you expect, how you expect it to be enforced, and what the ramifications are for people that violate that. That's HR. Technical controls is the IT team putting control measures in place within your computer environment to enforce what that policy is. And when there's misalignment, things are going to happen that you don't want happening because there's no way to keep it from happening. It's much like you don't let the front door to the building be propped open with a shim so people can just walk in and out. You have a key card access to make sure that people that are supposed to be in get in, and when they need to be seen, they are. So
Or another way to look at that is why you're putting, 3 or 4 gates
right,
when you
right,
already have something that is, strong enough to protect yourself, to
yeah,
protect your organization. Why add another gate? Why add another gate? So
it,
that's the kind of where we're looking at the industry, in the IT industry, presenting all these additional gates, but they've forgotten about the back door. They
yeah,
don't look at the windows. They don't look at the roof to
right.
make sure that there are still leaks and gaps into the whole holistic process. And that's what we want to change the narrative. We don't want to be just keep dumping solutions after solutions into our customers. And once a while we take a step back and go into the fourth point, the data visualization. Well, let's look at the tickets. Let's look at the security incidents. What can we learn from those statistics, the fact, and that we would work with, sometimes that we would work with client on a weekly basis into monthly basis, so, or even daily basis. And these are the things that when we're looking at these daily tickets or weekly tickets, and then that goes into the monthly, that we find there is story behind it, and then we put a better policies and procedure to stop it. And one of our clients, that within 1 year we were able to stop 80% of the security incidents. It's a lot to do with human behavior, but we were not able to tell this human behavior without looking at the statistics. And of course, that we need to have some tools to measure and monitor those and capturing those statistics, so we can turn them into a more visible. A picture is more than 1,000 words, and then from that picture, then it's a lot more easier to communicate and then to collaborate.
Yeah, and the data visualization is done because all three stakeholders are used to seeing statistics, graphs, numbers. They're used to looking at data visually to understand where things are going, where things need to be improved, and that's why we do it this way because it's more collaborative.
Okay, enough of step one. We're going to move on
Yeah.
to the 3 questions. These are the 3 questions when we engaging with lots of our customers. They say, well, where do I start? Where do I go from here? So again, we shrunk our 22 years of experience into these 3 questions. So the first thing that you ask, about your company, whether you are a business executive, business leader, governors, or technologists, what is a company requirement in GRC? And of course, GRC itself, it's governance, risk, and compliance. And we just talked about a lot of this type of risk involved with it. We talked about the 4 layers of compliance requirements and regulations. Governance, how do you convert the risk and compliance into your own internal governance and to come up with objective and relations in relationship with cyber resilience, which is IT, cybersecurity, and GRC. It's kind of like in the loop, but it needs to be in the loop so you can justify the cost, right? So that's the first question that you got to ask. And just that question alone, people would have to contact us or our partners in the consulting, with the consulting services to start this, to change the narrative. Now, second question that ties into what we do more closely in the
Right.
technical control side, because that, well, go back into that wealth management company, the owner come to me and asking that question. And then what they, his concern was, how does my IT team and my consulting team doing in terms of meeting the GRC? So that was his question. So we started with the baseline assessment, and the penetration test is easy. We were able to, figure out within a week what the vulnerabilities are, where the holes and gaps are. Then when we start going into the configuration assessment, boy, that was a surprise. It went into a 2 months process and back and forth, and then, even providing guidance for the IT team and consultant, and to, make sure that they get able to prepare for our assessment. And that took a long time already. And that already showing the owner was a little bit frustrated. How come it took so long? So Sean jumped into the call and, have all of them sit down and in the same room. And, the owner, what did he do, Sean?
He wasn't happy.
So basically, he walked out of the meeting and then right away turn around and call the consultant. Of course, that was a conversation that you can imagine what was going on behind that, in that conversation with the consultant, and continue with the process. And then 2 months
Ultimately, they
later,
just didn't take it as seriously as the CEO did.
well,
That was really the crux of the matter, is they didn't take it as seriously as he did, and that's probably an, a cultural issue within the organization. They're not all on the same page with how they look at risk to the organization, and so that was part of it. Part of it was IT skills. It was
well, but
a
that's what I was going to
combination
say.
of things.
Ultimately, it comes down with the scorecard of 30% of meeting into the CIS benchmarking, right?
Mhm.
So these are the things that, okay, from that 30% with the data visualizations, then now at least that they have a roadmap, they know what needs to be fixed.
Right.
So our job is done. We hand it back into, their IT team. So that's looking at the current resource in the IT, cybersecurity, and governance. And governance is in itself, are they ready for it? Go back to the readiness, the approach.
Right.
So do they have enough process? And that was part of what we, will continue to do, is as a third party assessor, we're going to go back to assess this again, whenever the time frame that they want us to go back and put in this unbiased black box. And then they can come back with the report, put it into the data visualization, and continue to manage this process on their own or with their vendors. And
Right.
that's the current resource. So of course, that go back into the budget. Everything has to be in the budget basis, right?
Yeah.
What is the 3 months? Well, a lot of customers ask me, well, what can we do within 3 months? As I said before, the cheapest way to start the cyber resilience is security awareness training.
Yep.
There
There's
are
some very
many,
basic, easy steps that people can do in the first 90 days, and
right?
that it's not very expensive. It's
And
relatively
we can go
inexpensive to
on,
do
to
things.
talk about the SAT a little bit, about phishings and how that leads into the ransomware. So that's another subject. In the 6 months, well, starting with at least an assessment, that's easy to start. And then you're looking at that roadmap for the next 6 months. You don't want to drag it for too long. You want to keep it front and center to everybody that involved with the assessment process, just like that wealth management. Then at least in the 6 months, you should able to come back and measure. We were able to come back and measure what have been done. From that 30%, have they changed it to 60%? And so that ties in into the expectations. And then that goes into the 9 months that we need to think about what are the policies and procedures that needs to be tightened up so they can continue to, based on the security awareness training, the baseline assessment, and come back and put in the policies and procedures together. So in 12 months, they can take it into the third step or the fourth step or whatever it needs to be. And for our process, this the budgetary is just planning for what we're calling the building blocks.
Right.
So the building blocks, I know that it's already, eight, well, 45 minutes into our conversation. So I'm going to continue to wrap up what we have. And that's another poll question that we want to ask you. How long do you like this webinar to be? Because there's a lot of subjects into here, a lot of topics, and we're going to put some poll questions into our CRG group. Please join our CRG group when you get a chance, so
Yeah.
you can let us know what you think about this webinar and how we can improve the content or the timing of it. So building blocks simply is the objective is alignment. And then based on the assessments, the process and procedures, now you have identified it. What are the blocks, or like Legos, if you may, just continue to build, one block at a time or multiple blocks at a time to become your final product. And then looking at the whole process and start all over again on an annual basis. Why an annual basis? Because requirement changes, human resource team changes, your vendor might change, your solution might change. Every time there is a change, there is a need to relook at it again. So it wouldn't be too painful at that point because it would be minor changes. But at least that within that 3 months, 6 months, 9 months into the 1 year process, that, what do we need to do? What are the building blocks? Like I said, the security awareness training is one of the block. Within 3 months, within weeks, or within days, you can execute that if you have the budget in place, right? So, and then 6 months, doing the baseline assessment. All we need to do is just send in our, the VM, the virtual machine, or actual a physical box within the environment. We can get it going. So all of these is to build into the defense in depth. And that's the analogy, that's the methodology have been recommended for decades with the defense in depth. And we have broken that down into 6 principles that aligns with the business requirements, which I'm not going to, elaborate on that at this point. And then looking at managing the incidents and to come into resolutions. Now,
And
a lot of vendor out there talk about responses. No, we don't want responses. We want resolutions. Sean, go ahead.
people are going to say, well, why have we gotten off the topic of cyber insurance? We really haven't. And by that I mean, while the insurance companies are now starting to look at not just, do you have MFA in place? Do you do this? Do you do security awareness training? They want to know, do you have a more robust security posture? What have you done as an organization to make yourself more resilient to some cyber incident, to limit the risk that they have by insuring you? So all of these things, the assessment Stanley talked about, the defense in depth, the managed incident resolution, they want to know, do you have these things in place? Do you have an incident response plan? Do you have a disaster recovery plan? Do you have business continuity plans? They want to know if you've made the effort as an organization, because now this is your level of maturity as an organization. They want to know that you're doing the right things.
Yeah, and thank you, Sean. Yes, I could get carried away. So yeah, back to that, and also that we see one of the insurance company actually require our customer to have a contact person to download this app to report the security incidents
Yep.
as part of their routine. So it is not far away if you're looking at cyber insurance as the last line of defense. It's not far away that you have to do everything that we're going to be talking about. Now, this year's there's SEC has there's an executive order. I think it's 14028 or something like that.
Those are lottery numbers.
I know, yeah. So anyway, that it required the financial company to do a lot more. So SEC has doubling up their staff to looking at the cyber risk involving with all the financial companies. So these are the things, it's not too far away that your organization have to implement those solutions out there. Now, if you have been regularly listening to us, there are over 150 of the open source solutions out there that your team can execute. And
Yeah.
we talked about PF Sense. Why we talked about PF Sense? Because that we've implemented for now almost 20 years. That we never, if you manage it correctly, we never had a hack through the firewall. But of course, with Sean's staff, that they didn't aware of the cybersecurity, cyber, resilience type of issues, that they went around and, downloading everything from the internet and bring the virus back into the network. So anyway, that, the point I'm just trying to make is there are open source solutions out there. And in fact,
Yeah.
a lot of pay solution is based on open source product, and then adding, enhance them
Yeah.
into their own product as well. So these are the things that, talk to your IT team, talk to your consulting firms, that you can have those no cost or low cost to start the conversation today.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, of course, the third step is monitoring justifications. I added the justification because I know the business owners, I'm one myself, even though I'm in the business. But my wife keep asking me, why am I buying all these toys? Right? To them, it's just toys. I say, if we don't test it, then we won't know how good it is to to implement it. But in the business, if you don't rely on technology as part of your business objective and revenue comes in, this is the part that a lot of our customer always wonder, why do we cost X amount of dollar? What is the value they're getting from them? Because after a while, that Sean is a perfect example. Why are we having another bill? Why are we getting this? Well, Sean, I keep telling him, have you heard from us recently? Have you heard from your user, your network is down, your production is down, and any of that? Well, if you don't hear it from us, no news is good news. That's what you're paying for. Similar with the insurance. Similar with insurance. In fact, that you don't want to be using the insurance, right? You don't want to make a claim into your insurance, especially in, auto insurance or health insurance, any of the insurance, right? And that is part of the measuring and justifications. No news is good news. Yes, that there is a cost associated into operating a business. But same thing, you're hiring a person. Is that person able to get you 100% of what you're paying them for? But that's how you continue to monitor, trust, but verify. And that's the process that it goes into this monitoring justifications. How do you do that? And that goes into starting with the data visualizations. You
Yeah.
got to able to visualize what you have invested in your current infrastructure before you're going to take another step to look at what else we need to add as a building block on top of it. Because there might be, you already have built in 5 gates in your organization, but do you really need 5 gates in the front door while your back door is completely wide open?
Yeah.
So that kind of start summarizing the value propositions, productivity. Sorry about the format. I'm going to have to fix it next time. Productivity, strategic, economic, operational, those come into hand in hand, and it's basically mashed together. And that, if you look at those four quadrants, then you can measure and we actually have a different tables that kind of look at each solutions. Are they revenue impacting if we don't have that particular solution, or are they revenue generating efficiency for the revenue? And so this is how we kind of rate it and grade it into the justification process. By the way, we're not a consultant, but we just do that to demonstrate where our value comes in. What are the values that you have invested into your infrastructure? Sean, I know that
Yeah.
there are a few questions, so we got
Yeah, the
about five
comments in
minutes
there.
left.
I just wanted to touch on those real quick. Yeah, Sheila, you're right. Notice is important with the insurance carriers. However, our issue with it was you have employees using the app to make notification of the insurance company, and the likelihood of the number of false positives going back to the insurance company were going to be astronomical, because they just don't understand. They don't understand what's an incident and what's an event. And that was really an issue of ours. There should be coming from management, who have considered what the ramifications to the organization could be if there were to be a claim made to the insurance company. There's other ways to deal with it than having the employees make the report. Charles, you're right. The the costs of an incident and the cleanup after a cyber claim is really, really expensive. It is, nowadays, because of the interconnectedness that Stanley touched on, the supply chain attacks and how it affects third and fourth parties. It's a lot like Mrs. O'Leary's cow knocking over that lantern in Chicago and burning down the city. You have the chance of really, if you have one incident, you're going to take down several of other companies with you. And then Jason, regard to pen test from carriers, there are a few insurance companies that are doing what they're calling penetration tests, but they're really external penetration tests. They're looking for vulnerabilities within a website, and how they might be able to gain access back to the company. They're doing some of those. An external pen test has a value. It is a value. Um, what we tend to look at is more of an internal penetration test, is that when someone's inside your organization, the kind of damage they can do when they can get everything outside of your organization, they can take it out the front door. And so while some are doing the external pen tests, I don't know if any companies are doing internal pen tests. That's a bit intrusive, to organizations. I'm not sure the insurance companies right now want to really kind of get into that, but who knows? They may want to start doing that with the way the claims have been going lately.
Well, again, it's just part of the readiness there for the penetration test. But of course,
Right.
there are a lot of, yeah, that's another showing my age. 17 years ago, 18 years ago, when we start going into this path of cybersecurity, that the first thing we offer is the manual service of vulnerability scanning. Yeah, well, it was great, for years that we were making good money and we would just keep writing, keep doing what we think is the best service that we can offer to organizations around the world. And we already saw that software was coming, but we think that, oh, great, we're doing the best. Manual process is always the best, because you can look at very carefully and very methodically to do that. But it was not cost effective to most of the organizations that we served. Eventually, one by one, they just went in to buy their own software to do that. So now, 17, 18 years later, actually 3 years ago, we start partnering with another company to do this completely automated. And what we find is not just about the cost, but is the consistency I talked about earlier. And again, this is the part now, the whole cyber resilience, 95% of the attacks was triggered by human error. And that is where our concern is. And that's why we're pushing for automated solutions. And that ties it back into, the pen test and why we're looking at eventually that is going to be like on a monthly thing or bi-monthly. I don't know, as often that as your organization want to do it, because it needs to be like that. All the vulnerability scannings are not useful anymore because they only looking at the signature attacks. What they
Yep.
mean by signature is already known. Now everything is on the signatureless attack type of attack,
0
zero-day
days.
exploitations that most of the company don't even see that coming until it get hits, until it's too late. So that ties it back into why are we having the boxers? Because on the slide that you see, because there are lots of acronyms between the governors and the technologists, and somebody needs to be communicating and making sure they're translating, aligning them correctly for the company, for the organizations to justify the cost, their time, and all the resource that sink into cyber resilience.
Right.
So that's why we putting this group together called Cyber Risk Governance in the LinkedIn. Please scan us, scan the QR code and talk to us. So this is the part that we believe is if we don't have this type of communications and conversations, that a lot of the smaller company, the company who don't have the resource, will get left behind, and those it's already being the targets from the hackers point of view because they don't have those type of resource to defend themselves, and they can't afford to hire a consulting firm to guide them to do that process. And that's why we're having this group to share our insights and hopefully helping the people that who are coming into this industry, or the people who are already in this industry, how can they continue to enhance themselves.
Yeah. And if you're an executive looking at cyber insurance, really have a serious conversation with your team, your insurance company, understand where you're starting from, where you're starting the conversation from, because the insurance company is going to want to know. They're going to want to know a lot of details about what you do and how you do it, how you secure your organization. So it's important to know the details that you have.
Well, thank you, everyone. We hope that you will join us again next time.
Thank you, everybody.
Thanks. Bye.